Thanks, everyone. It's really great to see you. I'm Lisa Palmer. I've got the good fortune of being the education lead and senior editor here at Planet Forward. I also teach science communication here at GW School of Media and Public Affairs. So you'll see me throughout the afternoon and tomorrow, and I'm leading a workshop on how we tell the story of climate change and health. And so a couple of years ago, two Indigenous graduate students approached me. So one was a doctoral student zooming in from the University of Arizona, one of our pillar schools. The other, a student in my science communication class, was in my office. They had this great idea. So an Indigenous Correspondents Program in partnership with Planet Forward here at GW and at the University of Arizona's Indigenous Resilience Center. And we said, go for it. And they did. They announced it here last year on the stage with Frank, and they recruited this amazing group. You may have seen them throughout the day, from tribes across North America. They held workshops. They learned from accomplished Indigenous scientists, journalists, storytellers, environmentalists. They produced some incredible stories. Take a look. Jory LaFrance from the University of Arizona takes us on an inspiring journey to southeastern Montana, where Crow cowboys demonstrate their ability to adapt to a changing climate. Shondine Mayo of the University of Alaska, Fairbanks, shares the story of Bax Bond, a UPIC research engineer who is committed to improving energy systems in rural Alaskan communities through a community-centered STEM approach. Traditional ecological knowledge combined with modern tools help us gain a deeper understanding of the world around us. Evergreen State College's Elisa Woodruff tells us about the partnership between science researchers and Skokomish Tuwaduck communities. Coming to us from Dartmouth College, Raylan Bark brings us a photo essay delving into her family's plant harvesting practices that preserve knowledge and resources of her Cherokee ancestors for future generations. Nadira Mitchell, a Navajo Dene student at the University of Arizona, eloquently interweaves an oral story to emphasize the importance of traditional ways of knowing and why it's crucial in science and conservation.
Oftentimes in Western science, scientists see themselves as separate from the environment and what they are studying. Within our ways of knowing, the researcher has a responsibility to what is being studied because we are in relation to each other.
An art that requires adequate time, humility, active listening, and balance, Alexander Kotnoir, co-founder of the Ilíiaitchik program, describes for us how these correspondents learned the art of the interview. You can't restore a forest if you don't restore a connection to the land, explains Natalia Shaw. In this story, Darian Ben-Ali of Northern Arizona University shares how two environmental professionals use their Indigenous knowledge to guide climate justice. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the two incredible people who had this idea and made it happen. Jory LaFrance and Alexander Kotnoir. Welcome. So Jory comes from the Apsaluki Nation in Montana. She attended Dartmouth College and for her bachelor's degree and is now a doctoral student in the Department of Environmental Science at the University of Arizona, and she's studying the interface of, they're studying the surface water quality in the Little Bighorn River on a reservation. And so Alexander is a citizen of the Nalhegan band of the Cossack Abenaki tribe, who grew up making maple syrup. We've had long conversations about that. And hunting and fishing and canoeing along the Quebec-Vermont border with his family, which really inspired his passion for food systems, for climate, and in forest ecology. Alexander studied at Dartmouth College, where he majored in environmental studies and worked to better understand environmental issues in rural Indigenous communities in Namibia and in Costa Rica. And he recently completed his Master of Arts in Teaching at GW's Graduate School of Education and Human Development. So tell us, Jory, about what inspired you around this idea of the Ilíiaitchik Indigenous Correspondents Program.
Yeah, so Ilíiaitchik. Hello everyone, my Absaligan name is Ilíiaitchik, which means fortunate with horses, and I'm so glad to see you all here today. Well, the name of the program is a word that comes from my language, Ilíiaitchik. It means to speak good words. And that's exactly what we wanted to do with this program. We wanted to bring good into this world and be good ancestors. So the program actually was a challenge to Planet Forward and the University of Arizona. About a year and a half ago, I was nominated to be a Planet Forward correspondent for the University of Arizona. And the last question they asked was, is there anything we should know or any suggestions or recommendations? And I said yes. I challenged the University of Arizona and Planet Forward to actually create their own Indigenous Correspondents Program that would be Indigenous design and Indigenous led. So we're really fortunate to have our Indigenous students learning from Indigenous experts and people who are change makers, really at the front lines of the climate movement. And to my amazement, Planet Forward and University of Arizona said, heck yes, 100%, let's do it. And that's where I was connected with the amazing people here at Planet Forward, like Alexander, who's just been such an amazing partner throughout this whole program. We're very happy to have the majority of our cohort here today. We announced the program last year at Planet Forward, and we're happy to have our cohort with us here today.
So Alexander, in your opinion, what makes the Ilíiaitchik Indigenous Correspondence Program unique, and what have been some of the highlights in the past year?
Yeah, so as Jory said, one of the things that's really cool is while our program is for Indigenous students, all of our mentors are Indigenous as well. So we have an Indigenous editor who we'll introduce in a moment. We have a lot of really amazing Indigenous speakers that lead all of our workshops. So that really lends itself to creating an Indigenous space where we can talk about issues of importance to our communities, like data sovereignty, food sovereignty, land back movements. So we can just delve right into those conversations because it's something that we're all dealing with. Another thing that makes our program pretty unique, as Jory was saying, is we get to talk to some amazing Indigenous giants in these respective fields. For example, we got to have a workshop that was led by Dr. Robin Wall-Kimmerer, so shout out to SUNY ESF. Thank you for letting us have her as one of our speakers. We had Anishinaabe CBC radio and television producer Duncan McHugh, who, if you haven't heard of his work, he has an amazing podcast called Cooper's Island. That's all about the experience of residential boarding schools up in Canada. And so being able to have these one-on-one conversations and also be able to ask questions about our own stories is something that's really unique about this program. And as Jory also said, we try to focus on healing through storytelling. So our first actual workshop for the program was led by Cinnamon Kills first. She is an educator, a Cheyenne educator, an author, a storyteller who focuses on storytelling as a way to heal yourself and heal your community. So we talk a lot about how can we tell stories that uplift our communities, but also help us to heal from intergenerational trauma, for example. And finally, we all come from very different backgrounds. So we have Shondine here today, all the way from Northern Alaska. We have Raylan, who's at the school that Jory and I were at, North Carolina, but now up in Northern New Hampshire. And so it's just really cool opportunity for us to connect and share those differences and those similarities.
Well, yeah. I just wanted to also welcome to the stage Valerie, their editor, and the correspondents.
Yeah, and so, thanks Lisa. So now we'd like to introduce our lead program editor and our story mentor, Valerie Vande Panne, as well as our correspondents. So if you could also come onto the stage, please. Valerie is an award-winning reporter whose work has appeared in Bloomberg, Columbia Journalism Review, NPR, Politico, and Reuters, among other outlets. She is the former managing editor of Native News Online, which is an incredible Indigenous-owned media company that provides critical reporting on Native issues across Turtle Island. So if you could give a round of applause for our rest of our cohort.
Thank you. I'm Valerie Vande Panne, and I am everything that Alexander said. And as someone who works in media, I'm often asked how, because it's very frustrating. I don't know if you read the media, but sometimes it can be very frustrating, and sometimes it can be very depressing. And then when you throw the climate into that, it can also get very challenging. And so when people ask me where the hope is, or what I think about the future, I think of these correspondents who are all storytellers and all had stories that were in them and in their hearts to share. This is the future. And with this as our future, the future is bright, there is hope, and we can actually make a better world, which to me is super exciting and has made being a part of this program such an incredible honor and privilege. So I'm so thankful. I'm thankful to Jory and Alexander for putting together something so amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce each of the correspondents now and speak with all of them. I have a list. It's a little bit different from where they're standing, so I'm going to go by my list instead of where they're at, just to stay organized. All right. This is Elisa. This is Elisa Smith Woodruff. She is an enrolled citizen of the Skokomish tribe and is working on her Master's of Environmental Science at Evergreen State College in Washington State. She's also just an incredible person who does a lot for her community, and I'm always just so impressed with her fortitude and her energy and everything she has to offer. So the question I have for you is, why did you apply to participate in this program?
Good day. My why was because I need to fill a void. And I needed to put it out there that the knowledge I have been taught and that I could speak English and that I could write in English and still translate into my traditional language is valid. So that's my why.
It is very valid, and I think that's an important point for all of us. Storytelling is our birthright. No matter who you are or where you're from, your stories are your birthright to tell. No one else can tell your story, especially if you tell it for them. Thank you. All right, Troy. Troy Madison Newman, is a Black Indigenous enrolled citizen of Piscataway Conoy tribe of Maryland. She is a first-year law student at the University of Arizona James E. Rogers School of Law, College of Law. And she's also a badass. She does a lot of amazing work too. Why was it important for you to share this story about Piscataway fishing rights on Planet Forward's web platform?
Yeah, so typically when we think of like Washington, D.C.'s past and present history, we think of like a congresswoman, or are they really going to build that bridge off of New York Avenue that they keep saying that they're going to make that overpass? But we don't talk about the Indigenous community that's in Washington, D.C. So I wanted to bring and expose the Piscataway people, not from an advocacy or acknowledgement standpoint, but also from an environmental legal standpoint, and kind of talk about the past history of it with the 1666 article piece of amity to the president with the DC Law 23/2021, and just talk about Anacostia River and what that means to us and what those water rights means from the Indigenous people in our perspective and how we should be involved in that environment conversation.
Basically that means, yeah, right? Clap for that. How many of us can get into any kind of law that detailed? All of this land, we're on someone else's land. And the government has treaties with all these tribes, and the government has not honored one of them. Shondine.
That's me.
Shandine Mayo is originally from Stevens Village, Alaska, and is both Diné and Koyukon Athabascan. She recently graduated from Northern Arizona University with a bachelor's degree in creative media and film. She's also an amazing person whose schedule is so full, and I could probably brag about her for another hour, but I'll stay focused. How did you find the story that you wrote?
Well, actually, the story came to me. I was going to do this huge story about multiple Indigenous people within Alaska, and that didn't happen. So I was going around asking my friends, who should I interview, because it was the audience that wanted to hear that story, right? And so I was able to channel that interest and voice through Bax Bond, who's a researcher up in Alaska, and his Indigenous value system is something that I could really connect to, as well as other people that could connect to that as well.
Awesome. You can read all of their stories, listen to their stories, and see all of their beautiful photos on the Planet Forward website. If you haven't, you should. All right, Raylan, excuse me. Raylan Bark is Cherokee, Choctaw, Wallapai, and Hidatsa. She's from Cherokee, North Carolina, and is a junior at Dartmouth, majoring in Native American and Indigenous Studies and linguistics. She's also amazing. Raylan, what about this program compelled and interested you to apply?
Hello everyone, thank you all for being here. My name is Raylan Bark. And I would say, to me, this was the first program of its kind. It was really trailblazing, and it was, again, just really interesting. And I think the biggest thing for me is the fact that they were willing to amplify Indigenous voices in a conversation that, one, not only concerns us, but two, heavily impacts us. So this idea of focusing on storytelling and using Indigenous oral narratives as a way to show knowledge, to show history, to show traditions and customs was really important to me and is long overdue, but I really loved how they were focusing on this to, one, just bring attention to the issues that are going on within Indigenous communities, but also the role that Indigenous people play in topics like climate change. Shke.
Thank you. That's also true. We've been living with the environment and have oral histories going back thousands and thousands of years. So a lot of our stories, they're not just valuable to us, they're valuable to our ancestors, and they're valuable for all of the generations to come, which is what makes these stories so important to hear and share and to be engaged with. Kaylee, who is reminding me that I did not sanitize this microphone before I held it. Thank you. Kaylee Arvizu, forgive me if I said that wrong. Kaylee Arvizu is Diné from Tuba City, Arizona, and is currently pursuing a degree in social work with a minor in community engagement from Northern Arizona University. Kaylee, what is the correlation between community gardens and Indigenous cultural revitalization?
First and foremost, yad esh e kili arvizu yanishia, na torana etachi inishlin, na kai bashashin, and ajini dashatrain, na kai dashanale, akot ego de nenishlin. That's what makes me a Navajo person. And I wasn't able to publish my story this year. It's a little bit delayed due to extenuating circumstances, which I think is a testament to the burnout and exhaustion that activists face all the time. And to answer my question, because I'm so passionate about it, I had to write it down, otherwise my thoughts would get scrambled. There are two things guaranteed to bring people together, community and food. And when you combine those two, you get community gardens, which is already a great way for people to learn important self-sustaining life skills. But when you add the Indigenous-centric aspect to that, you get the ability to teach Indigenous youth, both reconnecting and otherwise, reverence for nature, the original names of the food they grow and eat, how to cultivate culturally significant medicine, how to dye sheep wool for weaving rugs, and you provide the opportunity to combat the diabetes epidemic caused by living in food deserts, low mental health Indigenous youth experience due to systemic circumstances,
and other things Indigenous people are fighting against, such as environmental destruction and much, much more. Indigenous peoples, our culture, and the things we hold sacred are intersectional with every other fight that's occurring, especially the fight to save our planet. And therefore, it's imperative to listen to the solutions of the original people who've lived here harmoniously for thousands of years and stand in solidarity with us.
Very well said. Thank you. It is such a joy and an honor, and again, a huge privilege to be here and to work with all of you. I'm so grateful. There were a couple of correspondents who were unable to be with us today, Darian Benali, Carly Dominguez, and Nadira Mitchell. Their work is incredible, and they're just incredible people, and you can check out their work on the Planet Forward website. Please do. I'm a little bit over time, so I apologize for waxing poetic a bit here. But I do want to introduce one person who probably doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to say anyway. Frank Sesno, who is the man behind so much of this great work.
Thank you so much. Stay. This is great. Well, first of all, let me again welcome you, because I've done that many times, and let me tell you what you already have seen and heard and know, which is what a privilege and honor it's been to work with you and to see you grow, but to see the stories that you've done. And Jory and Alexander were positively brilliant in the way they put this together, because this is of, by, and for Indigenous people, for you to learn from one another, network with one another, elevate one another, and then share one another with the rest of us. And we have a lot to learn, and thank you very much. Thank you. But I want to repeat what Valerie said, is go to planetforward.org, and the little find thing, and just find Indigenous, and all their stories will be there, right there for you. And you can read them, watch them, listen to them. They're amazing. I'm going to come down here because we want to talk about a little news, kind of, right? So this is year one. What comes after year one? You're on. What are we doing?
Yeah, so we actually opened up our application for next year's cohort, and we received a grant from the Native Fuse Alliance to continue our program. Our biggest goal is to ensure that this program stays sustainable, and Alexander and I can move on with our lives and our careers and have this program be in existence at University of Arizona. So if you know Indigenous students, or you mentor any, or you're friends with any, please let them know about our program.
So we'll be doing this again. So thank you so much. And, hang out with us. We'll see you later this afternoon, this evening, tomorrow. So thank you again. We have a lot to learn. A few years ago, we had Robin Wall-Kimmerer here. She spoke to us. She came from SUNY ESF. And she pointed something out that was very important in the storytelling. It's something for us to think about. In so many cases, the Indigenous story, the Indigenous frame of telling stories is about Mother Earth, right? It's about people and creatures and planet in harmony. And in so many cases, the Western narrative is about conquest, and it's about overwhelming and fighting against and conquering our planet. That's a really interesting thing to sink your brain into. It's a really interesting thing to think about, and how those frames of stories can change.